Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Philip Blackett. He is a man who knows how to get things done across different industries. With experience at FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and even Chick-fil-A, not only does Phil have an impressive degree from Harvard Business School and UNC Chapel Hill, he holds a master's degree in divinity. Philip is the author of Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. In the book, he outlines a 5-step framework for having respectful debates with people who think differently. I'm excited to chat with Philip today and discuss how we can bring more understanding and less anger to conversations. Philip, welcome to this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. Happy to have this conversation with you.
I will always do a kind of a formal read-in of who our guests are, but if you would share with the audience a little bit about your story and why what you're doing today is so impactful right now.
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Philip, originally from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised. So, Southerner at heart. So, I'm a lover of all things barbecue, sweet tea, Chick-fil-A related, right? Um, as you mentioned before, I studied in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill. Also worked at a number of different places, done some entrepreneurial things, went back to school for business and then also divinity. I'm also a husband of 8 years to my wife, Myra, and the father of twin daughters who just turned 7 not too long ago. And so the thing that's coming up top of mind for me is the fact that I'm turning 40 in a few months.
Right?
And I think this gets into the latter half of your question, Lisa, where the thought is that, okay, when people turn 40, like, I don't know if life expectancy statistics have changed recently, but I think it's like hovering around like maybe 78, close to 80 and that sort. So the thought that comes to my mind, or at least a lot of people's minds, is that once you turn 40, you potentially have reached the midlife. And for some people, that prompts a midlife crisis. Um, for me, I think it's more so the thought of, okay, I've made it to 40, so I can appreciate that and everything that's transpired, both good and bad. Um, but now the thought is that God willing, if I'm able to make it another 40 years at least, um, what do I want the next half of my life to be? And I think that that's one of the motivating factors now that it's like, look, I've kind of lived my life up to this point. I'm sharing the rest of my life with someone, and I'm also investing in, so to speak, in the next generation within my own family. And so legacy starts to come up more in my head, but also in terms of like, what type of impact, what type of learning do you want to impart to people? How do you want to go about life with a scout's mentality, right? Essentially, leaving the world better than how you found it. And so I think part of that goes back to the essence or the origin of the book you mentioned, as far as Disagree Without Disrespect, because, I don't know if you would agree with me here, Lisa, maybe so, maybe not. Either way, it's fine with me. But what I would say is that we've gotten to a point, unfortunately, in our world today that it's not enough to be wary of raising up the issues of politics, religion, and money to people in a conversation, let alone at the dinner table. At least that's what I learned when I was growing up. Now it's the point where not only do you have to be careful about those topics, but you also are probably wary to raise up a different point of view on practically any issue without the concern of maybe I get the cold shoulder from loved ones or family members, the risk of me being criticized or even cursed out on social media in the comments, um, or even unfriended, unfollowed, swiped left if I'm dating on the dating apps. silence, or even canceled. We've gotten to a point that it's not as if we're just now understanding what disagreements are, right? We've had disagreements, I would argue, since the beginning of time. That's not what's new. What's new is the fact that for more than one reason, we've basically grown a culture that is educating the next generation that we are not able to respectfully have disagreements with one another. We are teaching our kids unconsciously that to love someone, we have to affirm where they are and agree with everything that he or she says. And that otherwise comes off as we don't love you. And so I think part of what's going on here is that may sound nice and okay to do in our echo chambers behind closed doors in our living rooms and offices and that sort. However, what I recognized when I was growing up, Lisa, is that, you know what, Philip, at some point, you're going to be in the real world and you're going to work alongside people that you agree with and alongside people that you don't agree with. The sooner you figure out how to work with both types of people, the better your career and your life is going to be, because I cannot protect you from those that disagree with you. So you might as well learn how to best work with people, whether you agree with them or not. And so I think that that was a big part of what helped me get the motivation behind creating this framework. Because I think from my own personal experience, I realized that oftentimes when we look back at our lives, the quality of our life is oftentimes predicated on the quality of our relationships. And so part of it is thinking to ourselves, if there's a way that we can build better relationships by improving our communication skills, to have those candid conversations, navigate those tough questions, engage in those debates, so to speak. If we're able to do that respectfully, then it's much more likely going to help us get into a future where we're not necessarily getting unfollowed or canceled, but more importantly, it's us growing up and being able to have these type of conversations where we're essentially sharing the message with people explicitly and implicitly, that you can truly still disagree with somebody and what he or she has to say, and yet and still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship.
It's a fascinating place that we find ourselves in society and in culture, right? Where things are boiled down to at this point, yes, no, win, lose, right, wrong. And the art of understanding is actually in between all of that. Taking it back to we've been having disagreements since the beginning of time mindset, right? In the Socratic method, the Greek philosophers, debate was the fun of discourse and dialogue, right? It is taking a position that is in opposition to somebody else, to tease it out and play with it, to see what that implication really means. And today, we don't know how to do that anymore. So as you wrote the book and you brought this, right, it is about improving our personal lives, our professional lives, being able to interact with people who truly think differently from ourselves. What is the basis? What are the 5 steps? What does the framework look like?
Yeah, so I try to make this as simple as I can, while also understanding that while the framework may be simple, Lisa, it may not be easy to implement. So I would say, as simple as it is, just with continued application and consistency over time, I think it will become easier, more natural to you. So to start things off, step number 1 is to separate the idea or belief from the identity of the believer. And the reason why you're nodding your head, Lisa, and I'm nodding as well, as far as why that's important, is because oftentimes we come across people that there's an idea or belief that they strongly, strongly are wedded to. They're very much intertwined with it, that it becomes essentially who they are. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying more so the challenge with that, though, is that if I were to disagree with that idea or belief, because you're so intertwined with it, it almost comes off to you as if I'm disagreeing with who you are as a person. And if it gets to that point, disagreeing with you as a person, I can't fault you for taking it personal. And if you take it personal, you're likely going to get defensive to try to save face, protect your ego, um, make sure you're not seen as embarrassed publicly, especially if it's in a public setting. And it's even in the sense where even if I critique it or criticize the idea or belief, you might take it as if I'm criticizing who you are and as if I'm hating on you. Right. So I think oftentimes we throw the word hate um, too quickly, too freely. And is a quick and easy way to shut down any discussion or debate once that gets out there. But what we want to do is be able to separate the idea or belief so we can focus on the idea or belief at hand. So then we move on to the second step. The second step is basically you can disagree with the belief or idea, and you can still respect and love the believer. So part of what's significant about that, Lisa, is, I grew up in a church where I learned about the concept of you can hate the sin and love the sinner. So it's the sense that you may dislike what someone did to you and still love the person despite of it. So it's in the same sort of vein where it's like, okay, I may disagree with you, Lisa, on this topic, but that doesn't mean I can't respect and love you for who you are. Right.
And
I
that's a
can't.
challenge for some people, separating, it's still right with that idea and that belief in the person, right?
Right.
An action, an idea, a belief does not define who somebody is as a whole person. It's a moment in time, it's an instance. And I think we get stuck on that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because I think part of it is we have to basically do away with this lie that thinks that love is contingent on agreement.
Yeah.
Because one, that doesn't make love unconditional. It makes it conditional now. And there's a number of different topics you can agree on, and there's a number of different topics you can disagree on. So if we hold on to that, love is contingent on agreement. Okay, today you may love me because we all agree that, pepperoni pizza is the best pizza around. But the moment you disagree with me, now all of a sudden I'm now thinking to myself, okay, I'm feeling in an unstable point right now. I think one example I would think of is, my daughter, one of them, she noticed that I was upset at her because she wasn't following my instructions when it came to bath time. She knew that daddy was not happy with it. And what she did was she came around to the bathroom to me with those puppy eyes and she said, "Daddy, do you still love me?" And so what I had to help her understand, and she's 7 years old, but I also would say this too, Lisa, if I'm going to step out on a limb here, we have people around that are much older than 7 years old that have probably went through certain similar situations with their parents and people that love them, that they made a connection that if somebody was upset with what you did or said, that translated that person does not love you. And so I had to help her understand, even to the point of over communication for my kids going forward, that yes, you're more than likely as humans gonna do things that daddy is not gonna like. You're probably gonna say things that daddy doesn't approve of or agree with you on. However, that does not take away my unconditional love for you as your father. And so if I'm sharing that with my kids at 7, it also helps us to have a similar stance with people outside of our family, as well as those inside our family too. We can actually disagree with the belief, and yet we can still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely, right. And again, the actions and the person are separate things. Beliefs and the individual are separate. And it's a perfect story about a father and his 7-year-old daughter, right? I was once a 7-year-old daughter and probably had that type of a conversation with my father along the way. And in the teenage years, they were probably a little bumpier because my choices might have been a little bumpier along the way, right? But knowing that my behavior and my choice may have been disapproved of did not mean I was disapproved of. We translate that right then in the workforce, in our workplace, right? We are going to disagree with people. There are a million ways to solve a problem. There is not one right answer. And having to be able to have those conversations to get to a consensus, or at least the agreed upon direction. As we move from step 2 into step 3, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think you hit on a great note there too, Lisa, because the thought is if there was always one right way of doing everything and you knew of it, would you actually have employees? Would you actually have teams that consist of multiple employees that gather in a meeting place to contribute ideas and try to decide? No, you wouldn't. So I think what happens here is once you set the ground framework as far as step 1 and step 2, now we enter into step 3, where we're essentially debating the idea at hand primarily on its merits. So when I talk about merits, what am I focusing on? I'm thinking about the facts, the data, the research, the logic, the performance, the reviews, the results, emphasis on the results, right? We're trying to keep this as an objective and as much as an apples to apples comparison as possible. What we're not engaging on, though, Lisa, is we're not getting involved in any sort of name calling back and forth. Like, yes, you see that in the news today, they'll get headlines, they'll get covered in the media and that sort of thing. You'll get a bunch of likes and comments and shares on social media. One side going back and forth, demonizing and antagonizing the other person or the other side. However, what I've realized, and maybe you agree with me here, once a debate devolves into name calling and mudslinging, there's no more debate. The debate's done. That's lost down the drain.
And let's really emphasize that for a minute, because I think it's an important part, right? Debate is being open to hearing a different perspective. And once we've stepped into, let's use the current language, an echo chamber, and we're unwilling to hear anything that is desperate from what we believe, there is no longer debate. There is no longer what I would call authentic discourse. It's over. And everybody in that scenario lost. So if we're focusing on facts, we're focusing on results and data elements. Step 3 helps us build to step 4. And in what way?
So step 4 is after you've gone through the discourse, you've gone through the debate, you made a decision, here's where we're going, whether your side won or the other one won and you lost, whether we still agreed to disagree on the matter or some third alternative that came up that we weren't anticipating to begin with. We should still, after we've opened the debate, and now we're in the process of closing the debate, we should do what we did when we were young playing sports. At the end of the game, win or lose, what did we do?
We celebrated.
We did celebrate if we won.
Well,
Or what else did we do when we lined up with our
we shook
teams?
hands. Then, sorry, that's where I was headed, right? We closed the experience with good game.
There you go. We shook hands, we said good game, and then we moved on. right? If it was at the pizza party or the celebration and so, but we didn't do that until actually, hold up, let's line up, shake hands, say good game, and then we can take on the post-game festivities. So the message behind that is good sportsmanship isn't reserved just for kids. Good sportsmanship is still needed in our workplaces, in our classrooms, in our living rooms. No one likes a sore loser. At the same time, no one likes a sore winner either. So if we can come out of this good sports as far as then going to step 5, we can respect and appreciate the person we just had that debate with or that discourse with. And even if you see things differently still, chalk it up to, hey, diversity of thought is welcomed here. But more importantly, let's keep the door open for continued conversation. So it might be something, for example, Lisa, I say, listen, I really appreciate the debate we had at the meeting earlier with the team. I didn't know why it was so important to you that we went with proposal A. It was helpful for me to know the backstory behind it. Thank you for sharing. You didn't have to, but you did. And I benefited from learning from your perspective, from listening to you. Even though we went a different way, I still would like to learn more about it. Can we talk about it over at lunch next week? Or maybe there is an event happening. A speaker's talking about that said topic. Why don't we go to that together and recap what we learned over coffee afterwards? So what essentially happens is that even the debate doesn't have to be a one-shot occasion. Shouldn't be just a transaction thing. Oh, we're never going to talk about this again. What it should be the sense that even if you make a decision to move on, there's still an opportunity for you to be curious, to learn more, and to build on the relationship, because hopefully we're growing up and maturing to the point of saying, you know what, the relationship ought to be more important than who's right or who's wrong in this situation, especially if we're technically working on the same team.
Philip, in the 5-step framework, you have shared with the audience and anybody who reads the book, right? Something that many of us might say, okay, this is common sense. If we, keep an open mind, we are respectful to other people, we separate ideas from people. This is not revolutionary thinking. And yet it's still so uncommon in society today. So in a show about disrupting and innovating, I love having the conversations where we find elegance in the simplicity. This is about respecting human beings, understanding that we cannot and should not all agree on everything, and giving a framework where we can navigate through the process of understanding another person's or a group, understanding multiple perspectives inside of a group. I really appreciate you taking the time and walking us through the framework today. If members of the audience are interested in learning more, where can they find more information?
Absolutely. So if you're interested to learn more about the book, to read it, it's available on Amazon. You can look it up by its title, Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. Or you can look it up by my name, Philip Blackett, PhilipBlackett.
Philip, thank you for that. For everybody listening, all of those links will be in the show notes to make it easy for you to make that connection. And I, again, appreciate the conversation and sharing an idea where we acknowledge from the beginning it's important that we do have different perspectives and that we learn how to respect each other and understand that I don't have to always be right, nor can I always be wrong, but we can learn and go on a journey together to find outcomes that are actually meaningful. Audience members, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.